Hippie, dog lover, bachelor, businessman, author, podcaster, and oh yes, once the busiest pornographer you never heard of. In his own words, a 20-year career as a smut producer. As frontline commander for Brazzers, spearheading an operation required to create and share content for millions worldwide. So today, as part of our special series on the influence of porn on society and sexuality, I'm thrilled to be joined by Vic Lagina. Just as a heads up, today's episode will be exploring themes of an adult nature. We'll treat everything we talk about with respect, curiosity, and without judgment, but there may be words and topics that could make you feel uncomfortable if you're listening in the car with the kids in the back seat. So as I said, our guest today is Vic Lagina. I never quite give an intro like this one, and I probably won't again. Many of you will be aware of his work, whether you admit it or not. Brazzers puts out a huge volume of content each year and is heavily featured on the likes of PornHub, YouPorn, and Xvideos, and many more porn compilation sites. Just a couple of facts. Did you know that porn is responsible for 35% of all internet downloads and 25% of all searches are connected to porn? PornHub tracks 5.6 billion monthly visitors and is the number 7th most visited website in the world. You can learn a lot more about this than you ever thought possible in Vic's raw and open and very transparent account of his life in Filthy, The Rise and Pending Death of Vic Lagina. Hopefully the pending is quite a way off. And there's the book. It's a fabulous cover. And I want to come on to talk about the cover actually in a second. But Vic, you're incredibly welcome. Thank you for joining us today from sunny Las Vegas.
Thank you for having me.
No, gosh, no. And as you know, it's a special series looking at the role of porn in our society. And I wanted to start really by asking you for your story. So who is Vic Lagina and what helped create the person joining us here today?
Well, who is Vic Lagina? That is the question for the ages. Vic Lagina actually was, he was conjured up to function and shoot pornography in the porn business. Before that, I was a dude who grew up outside of Philadelphia. I was the only Jew in my class, which was interesting. My parents were liberals, and it was interesting being the only Jew in my class because I felt kind of, I didn't fit in. If there's a common thread throughout my life, is I felt a little bit on the outside because I didn't really assimilate. Even within the Jewish community, whenever I did rub elbows, it was, it didn't comprehend in my mind for whatever reason. The religion is very beautiful and the Jewish people are very strong considering what has happened. But from a perspective of dating and being around, I always just felt I was awkward in my skin and in my vessel at the time. But then, I went to school for a Bachelor of Science in TV and Film Production at Syracuse University. And then after that, after being cold for all of those years and being freezing, I wanted to thaw out. So I chose Miami, Florida, where I got a job as a production assistant for a company that did a lot of producing and directing in the corporate and commercial world. And then I was getting my master's at University of Miami. So I have 2 degrees in production, which are too many because you don't really need that. But that was my passion. Growing up, I liked movies. I loved watching TV. I was kind of like your 80s kid that was playing video games, watching movies, not terribly athletic, not terribly musical. I am now. I've gotten better at that. I'm playing the piano these days, but back then it was just like your average A to B student that didn't really quite fit in. I had big, huge feet, like kind of like, how you see like a dog that's going to be really big, but they've got these bigger feet.
The paws are just huge when they set up. Yeah.
That was me. I had crooked teeth, and I got made fun of a lot. It was a very awkward time. So I felt like a little bit of an outsider even more. My brother was a good kid. I was always getting in trouble. It's a miracle I didn't burn down anything outside and, by playing with matches and things like that. So I was a little bit of a handful, but the grounding moment was when my mother died when I was 15. And that was jarring because I wasn't even around during the decline. I was in Israel on the birthright trip. And I found out about everything, her gradual decline, literally a day before she died. And I got the news she died when I was gone. And so if there's ever a moment where you literally are leapt from, your teenage years into manhood, I would say it's that.
Mm.
But then the interesting thing happens is that you have, that's the time when you're starting to hang out with women and you don't have a strong woman influence in your life telling you this is how you should behave, treat a woman like this, treat a woman like that. It was learned as I went. And, that kind of thought process and kind of line of thinking, um, it really affected all of my relationships going forward. And how this whole porn story started was I met a girl, and all of my relationships, even when I was with a Jewish woman, the only Jewish woman I ever dated, she was a doctor, she was a surgeon, she was a resident, and she was a cokehead, which was an interesting combination. So, because I learned to really despise that drug, which would be ironic because I would do plenty of it in the later years when I was mired in porn. Um, but when it came to getting to the porn journey, it was, uh, I'm comfortable in Miami. I want to make movies and TV shows, and I want to go out to LA. And I met this beautiful woman, happened to be born on the same day as me, like exact same age. We were like, oh, it's cosmic. Of course it
Isn't it?
is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's maybe that these two entities should not get together because bad things happen. So, for me, it was more like I was out in LA trying to get things going, accumulating debt. She decided, like, she was doing well as a SAG extra, always going on movie sets, making money. I was doing side hustles. I had banked money from Florida before moving out together. But like, she had her own trauma, which was literally telling me that, the day one I'm moving in, her mother was killed by her father when she was 8 years old. So you're having like, oh, okay, this is my new trench buddy in LA. And, then she decided eventually she wanted to be a white female rapper. Eminem was huge at that time. They were looking for the feminem. I thought she was beautiful. I thought she had a street credibility was the lingo because of what had happened. If she could channel that into lyrics and all that, maybe we would have something. I funded her demo, which be back 5 figures I didn't have. So I accumulated more credit card debt. And eventually things were just getting so bad, like I needed to figure out how to make more money in LA because traditional jobs were really escaping me. And then I answered an ad on adultstaffing.com. And that's what started this whole thing in motion.
Was it what you expected?
So the first day, I'm not going to lie, it felt filthy. Like, I think that's why the book is called Filthy, because when I came home from that day, I was like, I immediately need to shower. Um, Not so much of the sex part. It was the underlying element of that day, of that set. When I smelled crack being smoked by someone
Mhm.
in the condo, you're like, ugh, like this is gross. Like if I'm if I'm going to run this or if I'm going to do this, it should be business-like. It should be an atmosphere where someone comes in and feels safe. So I guess I needed that first day to show me what was missing and what needed to be done better. And then so I applied it on future gigs. One gig led to another gig, led to another gig, led to a dude that I wound up buying this house in Las Vegas with, which that got me out of Florida to come to here. But that's a little bit further down the road. But it was learning as I was going and learning where to find the leads. And after a couple of years, she decided she wasn't working anymore as a SAG extra. My debt was ballooning, and I knew I had a little more opportunity in Florida and it was much cheaper. So the plan was to move back there with her getting a job and making money. And, we'll pay our debts down and then we'll go back and we'll reassess. And great plan on paper, but, she didn't really want to work. She wanted to sit on her futon and smoke weed while I'm working two different jobs and being miserable. Like she even recorded me coming home just as a way to kind of like document how drained I was and how much of a bastard I had become to live with and be around. It was a dark time because
Mm.
I was with someone who I'm drowning. She's on my shoulders, pushing me down, not really helping, kind of agitating. But I'm like, I'm going to stick through this because we're trench buddies. And, I invested quite a bit in her rap career, which wasn't really going anywhere. I think I looked at things in the future when I looked back at videos during the pandemic of her. And the problem was she was beautiful, yes. And she lived a tragic life, but you look at her and you thought she's just not very likable. Like there's something
Mm.
about her. You look at her and you're like, no, like rejects, like that's how it all seemed to be. But I think it really happened was when she decided that she could no longer live with me, even though I was supporting her. That was when kind of the light at the end of the tunnel was no longer a train, that there was a way to get out of this. And um, that's when it started clicking on the porn side of things. And about I came to Florida with about 30 grand in debt, and I had only knocked out like about four of it in the 2 years that I had been back with her, or a year and a half I've been back with her. And I was like, okay, this isn't sustainable. But then when New Year's happened, it was like, here's the plan that's going to get you out of debt in a year. And I was out of debt in 10 months. And then what happened was the guys who would start Brazzers became one of my clients.
Okay.
So now they're at a part where they're finding an area where they're going to start ballooning up. They liked me as a producer because I took care of their money. I gave them a product they wanted. I was reasonable. I did it all. I edited. I just got better as a shooter. And they were like, we want to level up, but we don't think that, and this is true, the talent in Florida, the female talent was kind of lacking. All the professionals were in LA. But I'm like, I don't want to live in LA again because I know I'm not going to get ahead. Vegas made sense because no state income tax. And the cost of this house, even in the peak of the market almost in 2006, there was plenty of room to shoot. And I brought in a house partner. And these guys said, if you make it to Vegas, we'll give you like 20 to 25 shoots a month. And I'm like, okay, now it's time. Like Vegas is a gambling town. Tickle in my belly is like, let's pull up stakes. Let's head west. And off I went with my German Shepherd and came here and helped these guys build an empire. Was really what happened.
Do you think that the guys that are behind the really big companies in porn are they? Is it the money that attracts them as opposed to the, like I say, the art, the whatever? Is it? It could be any industry, but it's just the money. They saw that as a way to make money.
Well, sure. I think any driving force is money
Hmm.
in business. And the original owners they went to Concordia University in Montreal, and they were frat bros. They also all hung out at a certain social club. They played foosball together. I mean, my interpretation of that is a little nerdy, but more like that's okay because if you know the internet
Yeah.
and internet porn is booming, well, now you have this like the secret sauce on how to make this profitable at this time because the
Mm.
internet at the time that I was getting in, the internet was not really there yet. It was getting there. People were finding their way, but DVDs, features, all of the studio, that was the thing back then. So internet was kind of looked down upon in the beginning. But these guys knew it. They knew how to market it. And they brought me in as kind of like their lead guy to knock out and get the content they wanted so they could scale up on a massive sense. And boy, did they ever. Because these fraternity nerds um, took this pay sites model they had, which was really, it was all about boobs. It was all about butts. It was all about the girl. It was very gonzo oriented, very easy to produce. And I was a machine for them for a very long time, knocking out like 8 shoots a week from Tuesday through Friday. Because you have to understand, they're coming from LA.
Mm.
So I have to get in, knock out one, knock out another, send them on their way. Now, this was me with a makeup artist, eventually a PA, but I was a machine for them. And the difference in these guys versus subsequent owners was these guys took care of their workhorse in the form of bonuses and helping out. Because eventually, my house partner, that relationship fractured pretty quick. So now I was on the rope for all of this. So talk about being on the porn elliptical. I was on it. But I was thinking, you know what? I can make this work. If really this ends on me, I believe in myself. I will bet on myself. And I'm going to do everything in my power to keep this going so I can keep this gravy train going, because I took on all this and I'm going to see through it. Even through when the market in Vegas crashed and I was massively underwater, I still had porn and I was still able to navigate through the shark infested waters through 3 ownerships over a 16-year period. And that's not a fluke. It was just, I was really good at what I did and I can manage the chaos quite well.
That was one of the things, actually, when we were preparing for this recording. Vic's probably the most efficient guest I ever had, sending things back, doing all, and he sort of said, hey, how could I survive through all the ownerships and ups and downs of porn if it wasn't organized? So it's
that was really it. They commended me on that one. And I don't know, I'll say like the ownership I was most fond of was when we were building this thing in the very beginning, and that would be like 2006 to 2009. And then you had Fabian take over, and Pornhub's a thing, and that's growing into this massive dirty beast that it was, generating all sorts of income, putting people out of jobs, infringing on copyright, which is what they were doing. And it's all been well documented and all of that. But I was on pay sites for Brazzers and a few of the other brands because they trusted me. They trusted me for a very long time. Eventually, we were out of my house, moving into other houses and then renting. But for me, I felt when it came to renting houses, you were only as strong as your biggest asshole neighbor. Or if you're renting a house and let's say a kid sees something, that's a major problem. And I felt that way. It was getting like, we were at this one house, it was called the Gillespie House, where at the time I was with my ex-fiance. So I wasn't involved in what went on late night, but there were porn stars and people staying down there. And I had heard it was like a house of debauchery when I wasn't there, which in hindsight was a huge liability, but none of it was in my name. It was under a fall guy fraternity brother that was signed the leases and everything else. I was just kind of like the man behind the man and all that. But we got out of there, and eventually I just felt when we were in the houses, it was impending doom. So then I got a licensed studio that was 16,000 square feet where I was allowed to shoot porn in. It is allowed. It is legal. You just have to pay the right people and get the right licenses.
Yeah.
I paid a lawyer to do it all. And for 6 years, we were operating in this huge space, outputting live shows, 25 shoots a month. I had multiple directors under me. I mean, complete porn factory, meat grinder, whatever you want to call it. But those times in the first studio with second ownership, that was when so much money was coming in. They were throwing so much money at these live shows and all of these projects. And I'm just, constantly busy. Eventually, had the ex-fiance that was a very toxic relationship. It was the relationship that defined every subsequent relationship. The one you say, never again, I'm never going to deal with this insanity again. I'm never going to allow this toxicity to take control. Because it affected my family in a lot of ways. I mean, I talk about it in the book quite a bit. And I mean, I guess the funny thing is I had a hard time writing about it, not from writing it and revealing it, whether or not people would find it intriguing. But then I realized, sometimes my girlfriend, who I'm in a relationship now, she lives with me. She watches 90 Day Fiance, and I sit and I watch with her, and I'm like, I can't believe I'm watching and enjoying this train wreck. So for my life, I think people kind of might. The narrative for me, I thought there was a lot of ego involved. Are people going to care about me, my existence, my experience? But I think so far people have. But I felt I had to, in the book, kind of go a lot of different directions. Talk about people who died, which is very sobering. Talk about the Vic Lagina School of Porn, which if you're a performer or a producer, read it and just learn from it because it'll help you. So it's like research material. And then there's the actual fly on the wall porn scenarios that I watched the footage again, went right back to it, felt everything I was when I was holding that camera. I tried to make this as an authentic experience, a raw experience as possible. And from the feedback I've been getting, I've done that.
Did you did you ever feel uncomfortable while you were doing the work? Filming people in situations or things, was it not just the job, but was it that? Well, that was the job. You were the director producer, you were responsible for these big budget deliverables. You had a sort of corpus behind you. Did you ever feel uncomfortable about what you were doing or the role you were
Well,
playing?
ironically, not uncomfortable with the sex part and shooting it and being able to direct that. Whatever reason that was instinctual, when I offered direction and I said, okay, let's do this, people followed. I was their frontline commander, their words. So, and I think a lot of the performers knew that if they were coming on my set, there was going to be no funny stuff. We were going to work so I can get home to my dogs and they can get home to whatever they wanted to do. So it was an ethos everyone can get behind. But I felt more uncomfortable just existing in the business and not having anything in common with a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
And that, again, that's the thread that's been going through my entire life, just kind of feeling, who are my people? Where do I fit in? I mean, I found them finally over time, music festivals, my old roots of summer camp, friends with all of those guys. And that's looping back to the Jewish side of things. Like, that's where I find the Jewish religion very beautiful, because these guys who I was in a cabin with for maybe 8 weeks out of a year, which we know 8 weeks is nothing in our years, but to a kid, it's a very long time. But then you're gone for a while, and then you lose touch with them over years. Some of them I've always talked to, but we're a core group. Like, they're my people as well. The weirdos that go to music festivals, they're my people as well. I wore a collared shirt for you to look presentable, but there's full weird underneath here. Yeah, and just becoming like I'm comfortable in my vessel now,
Mm-hmm.
and it took me a while to get there, but I got there. But existing in porn, to go back to your question, I was happy I was in my bubble in Vegas instead of the Valley. I remember anytime in social situations around porn, it was weird, it was uncomfortable. I didn't feel at ease there. But they knew me, so it was cool, you know. So I was able to like get through some of these things like AVN. But really, what I felt when I was shooting was pressure
Mm-hmm.
to deliver all the time, because I always felt that I'm only as good as my last shoot. And if things go sideways on a shoot where things go really bad, it could be over in a snap. So my feeling was, treat it like a business, run it like a business, have people want to come back, and mainly be of service to those that are funding this endeavor. And that's what I kept saying. And that was my echo chamber. And, you know, there was the dark times, there was the cocaine years, which lasted, I want to say, for, I could say heavy for about 4. And then, you know, tapering off as I was getting into more the light, which was more meeting and being around live music. Whenever I was shooting porn for a while, you start getting into the darkness and doing too much coke, where you just want to get away and you want to just reset the needle. So hard reboot. And for me, you know, I don't want this to sound like a commercial for acid or hallucinogens, but they've totally helped me out in a lot of ways. Breaking down barriers, learning to feel again, learning to love again, learning to feel for other people, when cocaine does the opposite. All it does is just numb it. And for me, it was like, it was also called the Bolivian marching powder, where if you need the energy to crank out your crazy day tomorrow, do a big fat rail and, you know, you're good and you can do it. And that's not always good because it makes you very irritable, short fuse, nap, and people, you can see it under the eyes and all of that. You can see that someone is like,
Wants to come in.
yeah, no, I get it. That's why my door's open. But yeah, that was that. And when I started shedding and realizing that there was a better way to live, and I'll tell you, starting to write about it and recapping all of it made me start living a better life. Being like, okay, you don't want to be a story that ends with death, because that's very typical porn these days.
Yeah.
Not always, but it's becoming much more common. And to me, I felt that would be a waste to go out like that. So making better choices and not getting involved in relationships. Because I had a few, even my one true porn relationship, she's referred to as Jackie in the book. Compared to the other ones, the ex-fiance, the rapper, the, the cokehead doctor, that was actually relatively tame. I think, okay, yeah, she was a former porn star. Yes, she was a stripper. Yes, she probably was giving hand jobs in the VIP room. But I was also being a scoundrel at that time, and that was also during the cocaine years.
Mm.
When I was in the relationship that where I was engaged, monogamous, had a lot of opportunities, lots, because it was just always there every day, and I didn't do anything about it. So when it came to the next relationship, when I felt this was going to follow a similar pattern, which it did, except for not as toxic. Instead of breaking up, which is what I should have done, I was like, well, I'm going to have my cake and eat it too, and let's do cocaine, let's have sex with porn stars, and let's just be like a complete deviant. And you have to think of it too, like that's not good for business either, because if you get involved or you have one bad incident where you feel, even though I'm a guy who vetted and made sure who I was keeping my time with on a personal level wasn't completely meshuggah. That's a sometimes some slip through the cracks, and you're like, I don't want this to influence and affect my work, even though what consenting adults do on their own time is between them. Um, you don't want it to have any blowback with work, and when you're dealing with some people in porn and the instabilities of it, it's hard. So you just have to choose wisely, and that's what was happening after the last several years until the end of my porn career. Yeah.
It's what they say, isn't it, about dealers say don't get high in your own supply. And it's
Mhm.
the same with porn, really. If you're surrounded by it all the time, then yeah. And this is probably the wrong word, but it feels like quite, and this is definitely the wrong word, but it feels like quite an incestuous industry. As
Mhm.
in, there's people I believe read that tend to date within the industry because people have STD tests all the time, and it's probably quite hard if your partner's in porn to actually date somebody that isn't in porn. And people might say, oh, I'll be fine with it, but at some point,
No.
especially
Yeah.
the guys dating the girl porn stars, I think at some
Yeah.
point their friends don't feel fine with it. You know what I mean? So
So let's
it
stay
feels
on
like
this topic for a little bit because
mm,
I have a lot to add and you can ask me a bunch of because
mhm,
the dynamics of all that's different. For me personally, um, I tried dating outside, we call them civilians,
yeah,
and I was more of a novelty for them. Oh, it's very interesting, but I don't think I can date you. And for me, I get it. You're talking about, you know, a woman with a good head on her shoulders would not put up with the likes of this. And I got it. So that's why I got involved with my ex fiance because I had met her in the business. I felt I had to make some concessions to date within the business, such as, have to deal with a lot of stuff and a lot of drama and a lot of toxicity. That's the trade off. Don't believe that now. And I think that's a horrible line of thinking that led me to horrible, dark places. However, that was the reason why I did it. But you're right. In some ways, it's almost like, okay, we're all having sex with each other because we're all tested. And so we don't have to worry about the STD element. And so I'm thinking, well, look, I don't think I'll be able to find a relationship outside of the industry. When I decided with Jackie because she filled in a lot of gaps. She made me feel good. She was crazy about me, you know. I'd say there was definitely some daddy issues there. I was about 15 years older than her, and I was a strong role model, oddly enough, and words of wisdom, giving her sage advice, which is hilarious. A cokehead pornographer giving her sage advice. But I went to it because, it was a selfish part of me saying, well, let's take. You gave a lot in these other ones and it didn't. So I took from her, and I'm grateful that we were able to forgive each other for everything we did during that relationship. And it taught me forgiveness is possible. But that's kind of why I dated within. Um, but I kind of just kept everything at arm's length because even though you're okay, for me, it was kind of effortless to hook up in the porn industry. And it was just because I didn't really make it a thing.
Mm.
You know, hi, how are you? Here's your script. Let's have a great day. Positive energy, treat with respect, consideration, and just, you know, just be a good human, not be the sleazy pornographer. Like, hey, you want to get, you know, like you want to get sushi later, something along those lines. I, was interested. I would say, hey, do you want to grab dinner sometime? It could be anytime, or can I have your number? But it was always just like respectful,
Mhm.
not being weird and creepy, because I thought weird and creepy would be the death of me in the industry. So I just kept things at arm's length. Even ones who I developed relationships with, they were not your conventional relationships. One was married, you know, and was a sex worker and a dominatrix, but we enjoyed each other when we could, and that's kind of how I classified a lot. Awesome to hang out with, good energy, enjoy while you can, and you know, enjoy the moment, present. But ironically, like I don't really have those relationships anymore after being out of it. I don't know if they changed, if I changed, if we both changed. But you know, there was times where I just couldn't really relate anymore with them, with the relationships I had. And I think there was also probably a lot of bad baggage from previous times. A lot of times to get together and it doesn't work. And you're like, well, okay, if you keep trying in different times and it's still not working out, it's not meant to be. So I eventually, now I have a girlfriend. 4 years being removed from the industry, and I'm the best. I tell her, because we were trying to link up all like over a 7 year period. But I told her, I said, okay, our timing wasn't right, but you got the best version of me, because I don't think we would have survived when I was in porn, or whether I was healing from porn.
Mm.
I needed to heal from it. Definitely needed to heal from it. And to be honest with you, I'm glad I'm still here and
Mm.
alive, considering you see all these accidental overdoses all the time now.
Yeah.
I didn't really want to be that. A good friend of mine, he's gone from it. That's been almost 2 years now, year and a half. But it's the big wake up call. But that's not the way to go. You know, there's better ways to go.
Right. So how did you manage to get off the coke train?
I just didn't need it anymore.
Okay.
You know, when you're not around that energy. And I think
Mm.
here's reality. When I was writing all of the in memoriams of the people that I knew and how they died, I mean, most of them was either overdose or suicide. There was
Yeah.
one killed by a drunk driver, one brain tumor. But for the most part, it was apparent that there was a lot of pain. And, you know, for I'd say as long as I grew up, and I don't know if this is me and my insecurities, but sometimes I could walk into a room and feel kind of the energy, what people were feeling. Now that's me feeling it,
Mm.
whether or not it's accurate or that's my insecurity, I don't know. But I have to say there's something to it, because if you care about things, you know, I care more about dogs than I do about humans for the most part. But if you're a caring individual, if you can care and love dogs as much as I do, that's going to transfer onto caring about humans and making sure that people are okay.
Yeah.
But when you're outputting stuff, content sexually of a sexually explicit nature, and you're directing sex and you're kind of seeing their energy, you are numbing yourself. So for now, it was like I don't need that anymore, because I feel good. You know,
Mm.
would I tell you that if a friend of mine who had a trusted source offered me a bump because we're about to see a show, okay, I'll do that.
Mm.
But like needing to buy and needing to bag after bag after bag, I mean, those
Yeah.
days are way in the rear view.
Mm. It's really interesting, and I've been reading more about this, and a couple of friends sort of quite into this. The journey society is going on with things like you mentioned it, sort of acid and ayahuasca and all those different journeys, and I think we don't understand it. And I've had sort of depression on and off like 30 years. I'm sure lots of people have. And you hear a lot now about the benefits of microdosing with LSD and different hallucinogenics and things. And I think we are becoming more open to almost to getting away from the fact that drugs are bad as a blanket statement for everything. Because a lot of the things I hear about people that go on these journeys and can really find part of themselves that they haven't found before. You mentioned before, and it just sort of, just touched on what I've been hearing from a lot of people, that there are things out there that perhaps we could understand better if we were to open our minds in different ways.
Certainly. I mean, I'm a big advocate of that. It's helped me out. I mean, I'm a daily user of marijuana. That's not going to change. Not drinking so much.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say the first 18, 24 months of the pandemic, a lot of boozing until you realize, okay, time to taper off of that. But overall, no, I mean, I'm healthy, exercise a lot. Everything's looking good. Like part of the reason why I was like, I need to get this book out is because I always had this feeling of impending death. And so maybe I should get all this stuff out, and then not have to be around for the wrath, even though it makes no sense. You know what I mean? Well, it doesn't make sense on a lot of levels. Mainly because
you should have one of those to be published on my death with your lawyer or something. Just left it and it goes out there.
Well, that's kind of how it was. And my one lawyer, Ed, is like, dude, are you like terminal? Like, be honest, because I've never had anyone obsess about death as much as you do. I was like, it's not really that. I'm very curious about it. I have my belief system about it. But and a lot of I do, looping back to the question, which is a lot of things happen because of the experience you have and the things you feel while on LSD and around positive energy and everything else. It's your mind becomes a portal that is opened up to a greater feeling, and that feeling is the universe. And that's more what I believe in. I've said this countless times, that the universe is taking care of me in a lot of ways, in a lot of pivotal moments. My mind is thinking a little bit more that I'm not even sure any of this is real, that we may be existing in a simulation.
Oh, I 100% believe that this is a simulation. 100%. I know Elon Musk talks about it a lot, and I cannot possibly conceive that this could be anything other than a simulation. I mean, it doesn't. I can't make it make any sense. If it's not a simulation, it just blows my mind. If it is a simulation, okay, I can understand it, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, no, I totally make sense. I mean, I look into the cosmos, or I think about how many galaxies there are and how many stars. Like when you equate that every piece of sand on this earth is a star. Yeah. You're like, oh, mind blown. I can't cover it. So to me, it has to be a construct. And the beauty of this planet has to be a construct as well, just because, like, just look at nature, look up this moon that perfectly can go in front of the sun, but it goes in these phases. It's wild to me. So that I'm thinking, okay, if we're all existing in this, it's kind of like, I want to say a video game, because what's the point? It's more like it is a simulation just to be run to see how it all comes out. And I'm curious to know what iteration I was before, what I'll be after, because I think you're going to keep going in some way, shape, or form. So I take comfort in that more than anything. But yeah, when we were talking about relationships too, there was the other aspects of things where I think people within the industry, they kind of get it with each other. They're on the same battlefield, so to speak, so they understand things. The dynamic of a performer relationship when they're going out and having sex with other people, like, I really would be more interested in knowing, are you both like still physically active with each other? And if I can ask porn stars, I will, because I'm getting more opportunities to do so, and I really want to know about that stuff. But overall, it's like compartmentalizing. How do you think your fiance is about ready to go out and have sex with someone else? How do you compartmentalize that? I could say that the twilight of my career, when I was hanging out with porn stars, and being in that mix, was, I guess, a little more comforting, knowing that everyone was in the same talent pool from a health perspective. Knowing that their tests were current was also beneficial to me, and I was tested regularly, and I felt better about it. The rules are a little bit different now, and things have gotten more stringent, and more things have happened because of the swelling of the talent pool. I don't know if I would feel as comfortable doing that now as I would, like, say, 5 years ago. But I think too, they get it. And I've heard a lot of things where if a guy is with a porn star or dating, the common thread I always heard was, in the beginning, they say they're going to be cool with it, but after a while, it's not. and having to get over the hump of this is what you signed up for. Like you signed on this dotted line. I will date a porn star and accept the rules. And that's what they're doing. They're signing it. Um, that's what's changed. That's what changed, and that's what made it harder for a lot of women in the industry to, not have stable relationships for the most part.
Yeah.
Um, but it runs the spectrum. I don't want to speak in absolutes. Everyone's experience is different. So, but that's a common thread I heard. The thing with me was it was just always okay. Yes, the attraction's there. Yes, the sex is wonderful. But then, it's the post-coital conversations and nothing in common with this person other than the physical. Those are awkward times, especially for a guy like me, where it's like, yeah, what are we going to talk about now? What are we going to blather about now? And I believe like that those are the moments that I talk about in the book a lot, because I think it's always interesting to watch someone squirm and twist. Like you can't take your eyes off of it. And if you're honest about it, it's even that much funnier. But I thrive in those moments, but there was just so many of them,
So
and
one of the things couples tend to, they come down and sort of talk about their day at work. But if your day at work is the same work, it sort of narrows the conversation a little bit. And it's probably I can't think of any other. It's probably the one industry where women are, I say more powerful, but certainly more well known than the men. Most men can name, I don't know, 5 or 10, I don't know, female porn stars. They wouldn't necessarily be able to list that many male porn stars.
Mhm.
So I think it's the one where, and so presumably the women get paid more than the men.
yeah, I'd say that was a general trend. So I can only talk about up until 2020 when I was
Yeah, yeah.
dealing with the last of the company porn. From what I gather, everything has swelled down quite a
Hmm.
bit. Of
Mm.
course, they still pay their big stars because they want their traffic and they want them to promote. And I guess from a performer perspective, they like the title of being a contract star for this
Hmm.
company. It's like, I guess, illustrious in the industry for some odd reason. Doesn't make sense to me. Um, but really, I'd say, yeah, they're getting paid a little bit more. At the time, sometimes I would pay one particular guy $1,800 a shoot,
Hmm.
and sometimes I'd be paying the girl 1,000, 1,200, 1,400. And then it kind of evened out a little bit. But I think you're right. I think though, I would love to know like what a typical Brazzers boy girl rate is these days, um, compared to what it was 4 years ago. Is it more because of inflation, or is it less because there's less money? I don't know.
You've got to sort of think that. And we talked about this a little bit before we started. Really, I mean, if you go back to when I was a kid, porn was literally sneak and look at your older brother's Playboy magazine. That was porn. You saw a naked person on a flat piece of paper, and oh my god, that was the greatest thing in the world. And then you might have seen a video, a VHS at a stag party or something, and then under the counter. But then a lot of people don't realize that it was the porn industry that really massively grew the development of DVD and Blu-ray. All of the options, all of the, that was massively driven by the porn industry. And then you look at, but you go online now, and we talked about it before. Pornhub 5.5 billion visits a day, a month rather, and there's a sheer volume of what's being produced and cut up into clips, whatever. You got to think, well, if there's such volume there, then the money coming in isn't necessarily going up that quickly. So therefore, the money available to the talent, to the directors, the producers, whatever, isn't the same. It has to be lower. Just the economics of supply and demand. It means that the money has to be lower, and that's the challenge. That these sites like Pornhub and YouPorn, whatever, I mean, without any inside knowledge, they can't be good for the industry because they give away for free a huge amount of content. And then yes,
Yeah.
you could say, well, they're marketing, they're advertising for Brazzers, whatever, and you want to see the full video, go onto it. For a lot of people, I don't know, the 5, 8, 10 minute clip, that's enough really. They don't necessarily want or need to see the hour clip. So yeah, it's a bit like YouTube in a way that they're not necessarily a force for good. I
Right.
would think.
Well, it's a means to direct traffic in different
It
ways, and
is, yeah.
that's the business model.
Mm.
Yeah, and you know, the whole effort to take down Pornhub, I think the reality is that there is a need to regulate at least the tube sites in terms of ID verification, not just the user, but the uploader, all the
Yeah.
performers, everything in it, because that's why they got into hot water in the first place,
Mm.
because anyone could upload anything. And when it comes to child porn or exploitation, it's becoming a crime. And when they added the download button a while and people could download these images, now they're perpetrating the crime.
Mhm.
And that's why they got into such hot water,
Mm.
because they weren't really thinking. And this could sum up third ownership completely.
Yeah.
Very greedy, very arrogant, but very much living in the moment and course correcting as it was happening.
Mhm.
You know, that was them. And, you know, there are people who suffered from this. And that is the question I have for the porn industry is, okay, they need Pornhub for their business, right? And the business model is one of their videos. And from what I heard, when they had to do the grand purge in 2020, late 2020 and early 2021, where they cleared out 80% of their content, traffic went down, yeah, but the views on verified clips went up.
Mhm.
So performers were making more money. Getting paid was a different kind of story because there had to be bank transfers and things like
Yeah,
that
yeah.
because credit cards and everything were down. So they were getting more money as a result. But my question then is okay, but how do you reconcile in your head working for a brand that did such horrible things? Like, do you compartmentalize?
Mm.
Because I wouldn't have been able to do it.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
for me, their house started to burn literally after I was done with Brazzers and I was moving away. And I'm like, wow, talk about COVID being fortuitous. Not for a lot of people, but for me, it really was. Maybe not financially at first, but it all wound up happening. And I look at it like it was necessary because if I had kept going, or even if I went another 2 years, like maybe I could have eked out another 2 years or so, and I would have been a little bit better in a financial situation. But I'm sure maybe I would have gotten bad coke and died, you
Mm.
know, at some point, or a lot of things happened. But more importantly, the reason why I felt okay about it was Pornhub was starting to burn, the whole corporation was starting to burn, and now I'm no longer part of it. Like, thank goodness that it
Mm.
happened that way because I don't know if I could have reconciled working for them knowing all that.
And that's what I was going to ask next, actually. So was it a sort of the sort of cosmic alignment of the stars that led you to actually leave the industry eventually? Because, like I say, it's, you know, you were a famous porn director and producer, surrounded by beautiful people.
Mhm.
I'm sure you were getting paid reasonably well, and it's what you'd known for 19, 20 years. It was your life to some extent.
Mhm.
So, what was it that ultimately made you leave? Wash your hands of it.
So I started noticing, you know, okay, we went through the Bizarro portal as I
Yeah.
talked about, and then you started getting a little more the Me Too's,
Hmm.
the Me Too's within the porn industry, the cancellations, lawsuits. I talk
Hmm.
about Nikki Benz, how she accused of rape happening on a Brazzer set, and she was the brand ambassador, and all the lawsuits that were sprouted. So now you're like, okay, we're in an atmosphere that's a little delicate where before, you know, people would seem to talk. The code of conduct on set would be more like, okay, well, I'm not cool with this, this, and this. I'd be like, okay, let's make sure everyone's on the same page. We have a conversation. If something were to have happened on set, you know, the girl would call cut, stop, no. All these are words that you're like, okay, let's regroup, let's figure all this out. Sometimes you keep the camera rolling, you know, just to make sure that what's happening in between is not coercion, that it's everyone working this out onto its own. And that was working for a while. But then it started getting weird where I would have a shoot sometimes with veterans who have been in the porn industry for a few years at that point. I call them a veteran. And you think you're shooting a scene and you think everything's going well. Um, but then you find out the next day that the performer was having a completely different experience. But and according to them, they're trying to tell you with their eyes, or they're trying to tell you like in their minds. I don't know. I think there's a when you're dealing with something that is a performance, okay, and it is a performance. Um, you're relying on the performer to speak their minds. And I think as the talent started becoming as they're younger, like okay, they were all in their 20s all the time, but you know, someone in their 20s in the early 2000s is completely different from someone in their early 20s 10 years from now. Why? iPads, phones, messaging, social media, not really talking. And the porn industry really doesn't vet people. You know, you have agents and you hope they're doing their due diligence, but they're not really running background checks. They're not really, you know, asking the golden question: should this person be in the porn industry? And a lot of times they're in it, and now you put all these things in a vat and you start stirring it. Eventually, you're going to make a bomb that's going to explode, and that's kind of what was happening. And you know, I was finding the disconnect. So I was done with studio porn probably by the time I was age 46. You know, so I've been operating in so my mid 40s for a few years, and I was finding that there was a disconnect that I think a middle-aged man would sometimes find with their daughter, that there's a language barrier, communication, they're not vibing. Well, I'm the guy who now I guess is getting a little long in the tooth directing this, and these performers felt they couldn't speak up for whatever reason. They wanted to power through. And that narrative was becoming more apparent, even though I was taking measures to do it. One thing I was doing literally towards the last, say, 6 months of my career was because I was so baffled by it, I literally was microdosing every day before work, and just so I could be more present, more in tune. Ask questions. Are you okay? Could I have done anything better? Trying to be better because I was baffled by it. But once and I was getting tired of it too, because it was becoming more and more nonsensical. You have to understand something when you're shooting production in general. You're spinning plates, you're doing a lot of different things. And now let's throw gasoline on the fire in the form, would you just stop it, please? Throwing gas on the fire, which is now we need you to have sex. Like these are all things a producer are doing it. Now I have to worry about whether or not the performer that I think is okay, are they really okay when I'm really asking them, be an adult, speak up, please. If you have a problem with anything, let me know. And that was really when the company was starting to buy into that narrative that there's maybe a lot of reasons why performers aren't speaking up. We're going to validate that when they had my back for a while. I just felt like my confidence was shaking, and I'm thinking, why do I want to exist in this business now where I'm the one on the front line? It's probably like a good time to exit or take a break, recalibrate, see what the whole story was. And that's what got to it. I would love to tell you that the parting was amicable, that we all wished each other well, that I was thanked for all of my years of loyalty and things like that, and all the money that I made them. I would like to tell you that happened, but it didn't. It didn't because third ownership really viewed everyone as replaceable, which was stark in contrast to first ownership that treated their workhorses and were like, we appreciate you. Here's money. Here's a bonus. Do you need anything? Like there was that. The one thing I guess they did do was you see that Super Bowl helmet there with all the signatures of the Philadelphia Eagles. That was their one gesture for all the years of good work, which appreciate it because, you know, of that, but you know, it's a little bit different in terms of how they viewed their important people. And so it didn't end well. But I guess the good news is my lips are unbound. I nuked the bridge intentionally, so I could speak freely about everything and not really give a fuck what anyone thinks.
Yeah, if anyone reads the book, and I would encourage you to, they can pretty much tell why Vic won't be going back to the porn industry anytime soon. Especially
Yeah,
after
you know,
Brazzers. Flexes.
That's actually interesting, but here's the reality of the thing of the situation. And I was talking about this with other people in the porn industry on a podcast, and I said I don't think a lot of people in the porn industry read. Like one of them who was there, Tara Winters, friend of mine, shot her. She directed her, I should say. She bought the book. She has the audiobook. She supported me in both ways, but has listened to neither or has read neither. And we were trying to figure it out. Jasmine St. Clair, she had a comment that no one in porn can read, and I assure you that's not correct. They can. I believe some can't. I literally believe there was some, illiteracy when it came to giving scripts. But on the same end, I think they are very much consumed in themselves and what they're doing in their existence to really give a shit about my tale about the porn industry.
Yeah.
And that's really what I think it is. Nothing more. I mean, I see similarities in personality and psychology with people who are actors, musicians, and porn stars. Those three are there's a similar thread going through all of them. And when it comes to them, they're the product, they're the star, they're the one in front of the camera. A lot of times I'm not so sure they can be bothered with someone else because they're cranking out their own content now because everyone's a content creator. So I think that's the reason for it.
And just on the book, and the first thing I thought when I saw the book, and I mentioned before that I think my daughter's studying philosophy and she loves mythology and things. The cover of the book is very reminiscent of, there's a guy called Janus, is god in Roman mythology, and it's a god of beginnings, transitions, and endings. So it's perfect. If you didn't intend it to be Janus, it was perfect cover for the book. So I know why you wrote it, or I feel I know why you wrote it, but what message would you hope that people take from reading the book?
So I think a lot of people are very intrigued about the porn industry in general. They tend to think, oh, wow, it'd be crazy, like all the sex and you're around all these hot women and all of this and all of that. And maybe that's a very small percentage of it. But the rest is a true and utter shit show and insanity and odd and bizarre and a very odd existence. And if anything, I'm appreciative of the fact that I lived this existence, that I experienced it. I wouldn't change anything about it. I don't have regrets. I'm not proud of it. It was just so wild and bizarre that I felt I needed to share it with people. And I'm grateful for it. It was more for people who want to know, are they looking, is it a glamorous tale? No, it's not. It's not at all. And I wanted to really, if you want to walk in my shoes or want to know what it's like to walk in my shoes, just read it, because I try to give you as accurate of a description of everything, from every facet to relationships, to the production of porn, to the people who exist in it, to the people you hire. Because I had a crew, I had some great crew members, but I had some really awful people who were in it for their own nefarious reasons. And that's, you see a lot of that. But I also wanted to kind of show that you can do this and be in this business and run it like a business. And even for someone who felt could be somewhat incorruptible and not to succumb to such darkness, I wasn't immune to it. So I just really want people who really enter it to know what they're getting into. But for those who are watching from the inside, being like, wow, a very vivid description, very impactful writing. That was what I was going for. So they can try it out and experience and see what it is about. That was the reason for all of it.
Yeah, it's definitely not one of those ghost written puff pieces. People
Thank you.
Well, it's what it's. I think if you read it, I do think you get to know you a little bit. And I think you talked about, it's being in the industry, and I think one of the biggest takeaways I took was the huge strength it took to live through it. So you got out, you got in, did it, got out, and like you say, you're living a very different life now. And I think that's something a lot of people would love to be able to say, and not as many people as you might want could say that. So I think that's definitely credit to you for doing it.
Yeah, no, it was you're absolutely right. The plane was definitely like the engines were smoking
Yeah.
and like I one of the wheels might be gone, but somehow I landed that bitch and I made it out. And that's why I nuked it. But when I say I nuked it, I mean, first of all, I think if you want to sum up what filthy is, this is the swan song of Vic Lagina. Remember, he is a creation to exist in porn. This is what he had to say. This was his experience. This is his giving his two fingers and saying, "Yeah, I'm out," and kind of just like walking off. Um, so that was really the main intent in all of this. I am living a very different life now, being away from it for so many years. You know, I think a lot of it too was being so burnt out on production because I was doing it for so long.
Hmm.
And then, the other thing I did, so the second studio that that I was operating out of, I kept this to myself. I bought it, but I didn't tell the company or anyone else because you can't keep a secret in porn. And the way third ownership was and how piggish they were and how they would not want to have anyone have any kind of leverage whatsoever, I thought the move was okay, figure out how you can buy this thing, have them pay for it, unbeknownst to them, which is a bit of a fuck you into itself. Because at that point, I really couldn't, I did not like these people at all. I knew what they were. Even like the underlings and the minions, they were just like, it was just like being bitten by like a gnat or a mosquito all the time, And the amount of shit sandwiches that I eat on an ongoing basis. So me buying the studio and having them pay for it unbeknownst to them, and then flipping it for, enough for me to retire on if I live smartly, that to me was like the just me thinking about 4 or 5 moves ahead and being able to walk away. Now, that takes a lot of brain power risk, I would say, financial risk, because at any time a lot of these things, like I made a lot of snap decisions because I was feeling something like a tickle in my plums, as I was calling it, and it served me well. And so it got me to the point where now, I just am wise in what I've invested in, and I have a low overhead, and I'm living a very comfortable life, and I'm enjoying the fruits of my labor. I enjoy spending every single day with my dogs. Now I have a wonderful girlfriend that's living with me that she's read the book. And we were listening to some of the audiobook when we were driving from where she's from in Texas to here. And after it was all over, like she kind of looked a little haggard. She did. When I said, babe, I was like, how did you take all that? She's like, I loved it in a lot of ways. And sometimes I felt like I wanted to open the door and jump out. Cause like, that's fair. Absolutely fair. But we're at the point now. I mean, she's been living here since early July, but I've known her for 7 years, and I'm happy. Like I'm happy. Like if you were to have like told me the beginning of the year I was gonna have like a live-in girlfriend, I'd be like, yeah, okay. And there was only one person that existed on this earth that I would consider it for, and she's it. So there's certain times I start thinking I'm like my life is quite heavenly right now. It's enjoyable every day. Is it heaven? Did I OD years ago? And this is the next
Yes.
iteration. Like what's going on here? I mean, I still deal with the grounding things of like pain and, like have to stretch a little bit more, but
Mm.
it truly is joyous. And right now I'm really enjoying talking about the book, spreading the word, people discovering it, people reaching out to me like with nice words, telling me they like having seen me on podcasts. It's really quite wonderful. I haven't really gotten the wrath that I would have expected, but I'm sure if I'm patient, it'll be there. And if it
Yeah,
happens,
yeah.
it
If you wait,
happens.
if you wait long enough, yeah.
Yeah,
Just,
sure.
just, I just wanted to ask a couple of things about, I guess, pornography more generally. In terms of how pornography potentially shapes attitudes towards sex, relationships. And I saw a stat the other day. I think the average age that boys in particular come across porn is 11 now. So in
Mhm.
the UK, we have age verification. But literally, you can see you go into Pornhub and it says, "Are you over 18 or under 18?" You click, "I'm over 18." That's it. That is verification, which obviously is not verification at all. So
Right.
I just wonder what your thoughts on the sort of access to porn and whether that does shape people's views or society's views towards relationships.
So a multifaceted question, because you have attitudes that young men will take after watching porn, the age in which they consume it, the ease in which they can consume it. I mean, a lot of areas to cover here. I'm with you. So I discovered my father's Playboys and penthouses, and that was my first exposure to it. Younger than normal, but I mean, we weren't talking the hardcore pornography that we see. That waited until my camp years when the counselors had all their porn, and now you're really seeing the graphic stuff with the likes of Al Goldstein, Larry Flint. You're looking at all of that.
Little hustler stuff.
But again, as a consumer, you start getting to a certain point where you're 18 years old. Now you can go in that back area of the video store and rent if you wish. But these are bouncers in a way. They're gatekeepers. And they're not there anymore. And how accessible it is on just your phone. So before, my answer was, it's not my fight anymore, but I should have an opinion on it. And I have to say, age verification is necessary when it comes to accessing it because of the ease in which it is accessed, especially the tube sites. Now, I always worked in the pay sites side of things. So people have to give forth their credit card information, which in turn, that's ID verification right there.
Yeah.
That they are old enough to consume, assuming it's not a kid stealing his father's credit card, which then he, sees a statement and he gets an ass whooping, maybe. Who knows? But yeah. So when you deal with the tube sites, this is another reason why this tube site fight that is going on right now, people want to scream that this is, an infringement of their rights, and it's a violation of privacy. These are the cons against it. But okay, so don't go on the tube sites because you can't. Join a pay site, pay for porn. Pay for your OnlyFans creator. They're the ones who are really earning their living, and they're the product. Pay them directly. It's farm to table in a lot of ways. That's what I kind of want to tell people, the message I want to give them, like, do that. You think about it. People will go and buy beer, $20-$25 for a case.
Yeah. The
cost of this porn is much less than that, and it's also age verified. So why not? It's a small price to pay, especially if this is how you're choosing to get your release. When it comes to the part of the psyche of it, it's interesting with OnlyFans is a lot different because the perspective is different. Because the perspective is, okay, you can use the word fan. You could also, take a couple of variants of that and say stalker or obsessive. And really what they're trying to learn is they're obsessed or a fan of this person, and they want to know everything about them and what they live in and everything, what makes them tick, So that's an interesting psychology right there, which could also range on the healthy versus non-healthy. But when I talk to people about porn itself, I try to tell them, this is a fantasy. This is, I was given a script. We wanted to make this scene. We had consensual adults acting out a fantasy, and that's really what it was. And, I would tell people this, the facial isn't necessarily the always finishing move. Okay. I use the word necessarily is because there are people who enjoy facials.
Yeah.
Now, were they brought up on a bunch of hardcore porn? Some were, some weren't. So it's to come definitively that porn causes a lot of unhealthy things. I think I have the life experience to say there are others out there who actually legitimately enjoy them, and you should respect that. But you should also educate people that communication and knowing your partner is more important. And most important, if you're watching porn instead of being with your partner, it's kind of a red flag of the relationship. So maybe you ought to address that. So, I mean, and that's the thing, like, I haven't been a porn consumer in some time. Um, it is not because I was always around and shooting porn. It was more that if I'm in a relationship now, like I'd rather just be present for her. And if that doesn't work, then I'm fresh out of ideas because basically you're giving your all to that person. And if it's not there anymore, either you have a conversation about we need to change things or we need to go in different directions rather than using it as a crutch
Mm.
to get off. A lot of men screaming at me right now, like, you're wrong and I need my porn and everything else. And that's why people are all upset that the age verification is happening. But I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing at all because of how accessible it is.
Mm. It's a really interesting topic. You think about things that typically are lead to addiction. So drinking or drugs, or if you believe porn addiction exists, then porn. But I guess drinking, people tend to start drinking at least in company of others, and they sort of drink and they socialize. And yes, they might have a bottle of vodka stashed at the back of the
Mhm.
cupboard when they start drinking hardcore. Or drugs, people have to go somewhere, buy the drugs, cut the drugs up, share drugs with other people, whatever. We don't tend to go into work and say, "How was your night?" Oh, I just watched 5 hours of porn. I'm exhausted. I'm literally. You don't be. You might go outside. I got so drunk or I was so wasted or whatever. But we don't talk about our porn consumption. You don't typically know your friends, uh, what they like, what they don't like. You don't talk to it about your partner. It's typically so. It is one of those things that sort of yeah, it's hidden in a way. So
I,
I hmm,
yeah, no, it can be hidden. I'd say, I don't know. I mean, I've had those conversations. It's more just because it's like funny, like what kind of porn does this guy like? You know what I mean? It's more like to goof each other. I grew up in the Northeast and everyone just goofs on each other. My friends, we're like relentless with each other because it's funny like that. Um, not a nice sort of funny, but that's kind of what it's like brotherly funny. We're
yeah,
all ribbing each other.
yeah,
But I've had those conversations, and then I've had partners in the past say, "Well, what kind of porn do you like, or what do you
uh
watch, or what are you into?" So I've had conversations about all that stuff before as well. I think it's just really, you know what it is? It's not. It's people who are uncomfortable
yes,
with the topic of sex,
yeah,
and some of my friends are uncomfortable. Like I have a couple of them who they read like portions of the book and they put it down because it just the topics of conversation were uncomfortable to them. And it's like, wow, I'm friends with you, and you're friends with me, but you're very uptight when it comes to this topic. For me,
mm,
I I I probably should scale it back sometimes, because
yes,
but I find the fun. You know what it is? I find the reactions of others
mm,
funny. Like especially if someone's like twisting a little bit, it's like
yeah.
you kind of enjoy watching some people squirm sometimes because
Mm.
you don't know what's going to happen next.
So when you went to your partner's family for Thanksgiving for the first time, was it sort of, hey, so what do you do, Vic? What's your background?
So,
How did they handle it?
no, so it actually was reversed this time. She came down for Thanksgiving, but my partner was porn adjacent.
Hmm.
So this has already been covered and accepted, which I think is why I have optimism it's going to work
Yeah.
because it's not a thing. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? And I don't think it should be a thing at all. I
Hmm.
know I kept it quiet for a while on my end, and I talk about it in the book. It was an atypical closet case. I was a closeted pornographer basically, mainly because I just didn't want to be judged by
Yeah.
people or looked at differently, like, oh, he's sleazy, he's in porn. No, no, that's not really the
It's
case.
funny, isn't it? It is one of the things whereas you might have said, oh, I'm an actor or I'm a sports person or whatever, but people have opinions. People
Yeah.
have a view without knowledge, and that's why
Mhm.
I think books like your book, it does give the knowledge at least. So have the knowledge, and then if you want to make a judgment or whatever, then okay, judge it. But just judging on what you think, 99% of the time is wrong. I think it's such a difficult thing. You talked about OnlyFans a couple of times. I just wonder whether that's I guess that's competition for the industry, for the aggregators to some extent, but it does give talent more control over their content. And one of the things you talked about before was the stalkers or the fans or whatever. But there's been a lot in the press lately about how AI is increasingly being used to create the conversations. So if you think you're having a conversation with your favorite OnlyFans star, you might well be talking to AI, and so you're not talking to the person at all. And yeah, I just wondered whether OnlyFans is a good thing for the talent, whether there's much money in it, and what your thoughts were.
Well, everything is cyclical. Everything is a pendulum. What happened during COVID, when everyone was locked down, was the creators and OnlyFans saw a massive boost, and it affects more the porn monopoly than anything. I think the performers and the creators realized that what their worth was and how much they could make. And I think they're the ones who were really that bear the brunt of any kind of discrimination, any kind of judgment, morally and otherwise, financially. Uh, I think it was good for it was good. It was good overall for the business, because it gave the monopoly a little less power. Um, when it comes to whether or not you're actually genuinely speaking to the performer, whether you're speaking to AI, well, that's up in the air. A lot of people, most people don't really know. They might be talking to a AI or a bot, or perhaps even a manager, an account manager, because a lot of them have managers, management, which they take a piece of their OnlyFans and they basically talk to the fans and manage the accounts and promote and do all that stuff as well. So, I guess I'd say a lot of the consumers don't know that. So you have a degree of fraud there, a very big degree of fraud. But I'll play devil's advocate for a second. Is that any different than the phone sex operator that you're calling being different than the lady in the picture? Because I think the lady
it's not the same lady, surely. Come on now,
right.
They'll
So I
never do
mean,
that.
so I look at that as that was always going on in the past. It always will. I'll address AI in a minute. I have a little bit different line of thinking about all that, but I think it's made it's given the power back to the performers, which I think is good. And I think for a more astute connoisseur would really look and make sure that the person they're talking to is her and figure out how to do it. And there's a variety of ways to do that, which is videos, pictures, Skype shows, things like that, where girls can make money doing it because the fan wants to talk to them. So I think it's great. I think it makes the accessibility better. I think it gives the performer their power. But then I guess there's another area too, the AI factor of things, which is why I think fourth ownership, if you actually believe it is fourth ownership, bought PornHub when it was a distressed asset in early 2023. And, I've been talking to my brother who he's in the cannabis industry, but he deals with the data side of things and the marketing side of things. And his first reaction was data. That's why they bought it. They bought the data.
Yeah.
And then I started thinking, okay, well, why would they want the data? And when it comes to AI, there's going to be two types of people. There's going to be the organics and the non-organics, the ones who are okay with AI. I think there have been people who know they're talking to AI and they're okay with it. So I look at that as like being like Blade Runner, like the second one, when, Ana de Armas is the digital girlfriend. We're kind of going to be moving in that direction.
Yeah.
But think about that. You have a unique user. They don't really necessarily know who this person is, but they know what their searches are. They know if they like blondes, brunettes, what type. Now you create a virtual girlfriend. And for people who are lonely, who can't get the organic girls, now you have that. That's why I believe they bought. Whether or not it's still the same people, we don't know, because their web of corporate structure goes internationally.
Yeah.
So we'll never know. But it seems with all the lawsuits right now, there's a lot of discovery going on and an untangling of those webs. So
No, I think 100% it's a data play. I think if you've got 5 billion points of access per month, and the dwell time is quite high for Sunday website dwell time, then that data it's invaluable. And I do think you are going to get more and more of that AI girlfriend or whatever we end up. And I was talking to a professor of AI and ethics at Stanford a few months ago, a lady, and she was absolutely fascinating. And we talked more about AI in general. And something you said, there's a massive they sort of ran an experiment where people were talking to a person they thought, and the conversation was going, and they rated their happiness of the conversation, etc. And that it wasn't a sort of porn related conversation, just a general conversation. And then they told them actually no, it was AI. And in terms of their satisfaction in the conversation, dropped massively. But when they're informed beforehand it was AI, it was pretty much on a level. So if you know, it's that fraud thing. If you know what's happening, if you know the person you're talking to, or the system, or the AI sex robot that'll exist in some years, I'm sure. Because I think some crazy stat now, something like 34% of men under the age of 25 state that they are lonely or very lonely at times. We've got a loneliness epidemic. We have less and less ability to talk. You talked about, people in the industry now, in the porn industry that are sort of, early 20s, they were born after the year 2000. How crazy is that? So they've never known life without a smartphone. They've never known life without the internet. And I certainly have. And when I was at school, there was no social media. Thankfully, there was nothing was going to get posted. Whereas now, your life literally it's available to anybody. And that's the challenge, that people that have access to it. So I think AI will be a good thing overall. I think the key thing is that you need to know when you're dealing with AI as opposed to it masquerading as something else. I think that's the big thing. And I think porn, we know it moved forward. DVDs, VHS, Blu-ray, it'll move forward AI. It really will.
Yeah.
And they recognize with the data that they've got, billions and billions of data points. That's what people want for 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the other thing too with AI, I look at porn production now as being risky on a lot of levels. Well, now you don't need it. Now you have AI performers that are looking pretty lifelike, doing exactly what maybe the user is requesting, or what is the actual theme of this simulated sexual act, which goes back to the whole simulation thing. Here we are creating our own. So this is just the next layer of it.
No. You talked before about you said before you sort of work out a lot, you're much healthier now. So how do you practice self-care? What do you do to look after yourself? You put a lot of energy into your book, the podcast, your relationship, your dogs, everything else. How do you make sure you're fit and healthy mentally and physically?
So even before the pandemic, years before, I would just work out at home. My schedule was always pretty crazy. People look at me like I was insane, but I was always up before the sun was up. Always, just automatically. Sometimes alarm, but a lot of times I would start the day exercising before I even went into work and into shoot and do all that. And I was, despite like doing all the drugs that I was doing, I was also just maintaining like a healthy lifestyle, organic food, just being very mindful of what I put in the body. Of course, the drugs completely void a lot of that, but that is
you get
that is the
organic food section, and then you sort of get a bowl of Coke on the side.
Right, but that's like the duality that was always inside of me, still is to a certain extent, but the wild man has subsided. But so I always had these habits, and I always worked out at home. Like I used to go to a gym, but then that meant I have to spend like an extra 30 minutes going someplace in the mornings, and then I'm going to work and I'm shooting a porn scene. So I always had these habits early on, and I stayed with them. And now it's just a matter of just maintenance, just maintaining what I have, raising the heart level with elliptical, which I have here, weights I have here, and I just do this. I do this. Weekends are my off time, but during the week, I'll just exercise, and I'll just maintain it that way while at home. And now, the only thing I have to worry about now is, because I have a wonderful girlfriend who cooks for me, is I just weight management and portion control. Yeah, that's what I'm dealing with now. But generally healthy. I go get, checkups every year, blood work, everything. And
Mhm.
so far everything's been good. And I want to say, I believe that a lot of it has to do with just maintaining a healthy lifestyle, and getting enough sleep, you
Yeah.
know? So
And from a mental perspective, are you spiritual? Do you meditate? Do you sort of take time out for yourself to sort of think? Do you silent retreats? What's the mental side of your life like?
I'd say a lot of it's just like, being in silence,
Yeah.
thinking in silence. I mean, reading a lot, or just being out in the back, dogs running around, smoking a joint, just kind of just chilling, thinking. I'm always thinking. The mind's always going. Um, Not in a, like I have to do certain kind of way. Like I always felt like I had to do something. I was on a schedule. I would be very routine oriented. Now I'm just more like the wandering guy that's just like, all right, what are we gonna do today? And I love it. I
Right.
love it because
Mm.
I think about the stress now of what a porn shoot would be,
Mhm.
and you get like you tense up a little bit,
Mm.
like, and you're like thankful like, you don't have to deal with that again. And when you hear from people still in the industry that I talk to from time to time, and I ask them how is it, how more importantly, how are you doing? How's your,
Yeah.
and I hear the stories. I just always say the same thing. I'm like, thank God I am out of it, because I couldn't exist in it anymore. Not with how I view things. I would be, you know what I would be? I would be like kind of like the flighty talent, you know, that would show up on set when they want to, because, and making producers like me mad because we're losing the day. We're gonna have to rush to get you on the plane. But I've morphed into that, being more
Mm.
like, I'm on my own schedule now. Um, the funny thing about this, and I don't know if you're aware, but this was nominated for an AVN award this year.
It's kind of okay. I wonder if the person nominated it read it.
See, it
That's
goes back
ironic.
to my previous point. I don't think people read in the
No,
industry
no.
because they're
Hey, well,
consumer.
it's a great book. It's about the industry. This is great. Yeah, it's a flagship for the
Like, I
industry.
mean, I want to say, like, I mean, I don't think I'm like overly critical, but I
No.
think I'm very honest with a lot of things. And my experiences with AVN and being at the award shows and everything, I still believe this. I just think it's like it's it's so bizarre to me, But maybe people are saying you need to go this year. You need to lean into it, because like here's reality. Before this, if any time I did get a nomination, it was because I was working for the company and
Mhm.
everything else. This was done solely by me,
You- mm.
you know, and no one else. This was me just being like, all right, I'm going to do my cool, fun, bossy thing. That's like my final chapter, my swan song, or Vic Lagina's swan song, however you want to look at it. And there's going to be a press release that's going to come out soon. And I asked the one who's doing it, the publicist, to not edit my words. I have some things I want to say, but do I think I'm going to win it? No, I don't. I just think the politics behind it would prevent that.
Yeah,
But it would be a great speech, would it not?
it would. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think I know the answer to this, but do you like the person you are today?
Yes, I'm happy.
Good.
I'm happy. I feel grounded. As far as where I am most of the time, or the region, I like it out here out west. I like that you can drive in 4 hours in any direction and find something cool.
Yeah.
Um, I can take my dogs with me and my girlfriend. We can load up my truck and go. I do have land. I own 36 acres of raw dirt. That's kind of like my rancho apocalypto that I can go to and take off if I want to. So in a lot of ways I'm living the dream, and now, like, it was great before.
Mhm.
Now I have an awesome woman to wake up to every day. So I think all that happened, I landed exactly where I was supposed to be, which is where I am now and being in the now. So yes, grateful, blessed.
I think that's a perfect place to end. Thank you, thank you. I really enjoyed that. I wasn't sure what to expect. Just massive thanks for your openness, really, and recognition of the life you had, the life you have, and the sort of, yeah, the power of love, really. You and your partner, the love for the dogs, love for nature, love for life. I think it's a small word, 4 letters, but I think it's pretty important. So no, it's a big thank
Yes.
you.
Yeah, no problem. I think the truth is not many would expect this from a pornographer. And I guess if there was a hurdle that I have to overcome that I've been overcoming, it was for people to take this as more of, wait a minute, there's actually something there. There's depth, there's humanity, there's emotion, there's feeling, there's time. A lot of time went into it.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think if you saw that I was an open book in this interview, it's magnifying times 100 in the actual book.
Mm.
So if people want a real journey, then go check it out. It's go to the website, viclagina.com. Check me out on Instagram or X at Vic Lagina. I'd love to hear from people. So, and thank you for being interested.
Oh gosh, no, absolute pleasure. I'll put all the links into the show notes, and I'll put a few more things in there. But yeah, I'd highly recommend the audio version as well, if you want to hear the words as well as read them. But yeah, let's do it through the headphones. Let's do it through the car stereo. With the kids,
That's
in the
smart.
back.